I'm excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. I have my special guest, David Paffenholz, to talk about AI disrupting the entire field of recruiting. And David and his team just hit the scene recently with a company called PeopleGPT. Now, if you've used ChatGPT, it's freaking amazing. Like you put in a prompt, you get an awesome answer, you mess around with everything, and it creates some great content. David's team actually took that up like 10 notches. So like picture this. You're using like a chat GPT like program. You're typing in what you want and are looking for. It finds those people based on those prompts and then personalizes direct messages to them because it also has their contact information. So this is like mind blowing. Excited to talk about the AI revolution and how it's disrupting recruiting. So David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, like, real quick, like, how do you even get into this wonderful world of recruiting in this recruiting space?
Yeah, so I started off in my first experience in recruiting was when I was working with a venture firm called NEA, and I was working with their talent team. And so it was both for internal talent operations at NEA, but also supporting some of their portfolio companies with their talent and their different recruiting needs. And so that was my first foray into the industry. From there, we then launched what has now become PeopleGPT, the parent company of it being JuiceBox, and that has that has really helped us get even deeper. And we do sometimes I feel like I'm more of a recruiter at the moment than running this business because I'm on calls all day thinking about different searches, helping some of our customers figure out how to best set that up, and also giving some advice on how to best prompt the system to really run those searches too.
Okay, so real quick, give the listeners a good like explanation of what People GPT is.
Yeah, I think you actually already did a great job in the intro. So essentially, you can think of it as ChatGPT and the interface that it comes with, being able to speak with a system and have a conversation with it, with all of the people data that you can find from different professional networks built into it. And so you might be able to find an individual, look at their LinkedIn profile, their GitHub profile, Stack Overflow, and more, really assess the candidate and do so while speaking to an AI.
And like one of the coolest things, because like I've done some stuff on Chat GPT on like searching for companies or searching for this, but like you guys also have like a database of like contact information and like the prompts that you give it also feed the people with the contact information, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I think our product really excels is that not only do we have the AI based chat interface, but we also have this database of all professional information for both individual profiles and backgrounds. So what are their experiences? What jobs have they had in the background in the past? What type of skills are they focused on? But also their contact information. How can we reach out to them, be it by email or by phone number too?
And I've seen from the demo, I played around with it, and it writes like a pretty dang good personalized message. Like how?
Yeah, that's also one of my favorite features. One cool bit about that in particular is that we actually let you combine your own template. So if you have like a 2 or 3 sentence pitch for the role, you can keep that the same, but then also have the personalization on top. And so that's where we've seen a lot of value for recruiters using the platform compared to having, say, ChatGPT write a whole email from scratch, where sometimes it's really good, but sometimes it also adds some things that you don't really want it to add. And so that's what we've been quite focused on keeping it consistent and making sure it's always a fit for a recruiting need.
So like your customer base, is it mostly recruiters right now?
Yeah, it's almost all recruiters. We have a couple other use cases in like expert networks and research, but I think 90% plus are in the recruiting space.
Okay. Do you ever see this as like I know like AI like there's talks of AI taking over recruiting jobs. Like I think AI will help make great recruiters be more effective. But at the same time, like this stuff has the possibility to take out some I would say some average recruiters. What do you think?
It's an interesting question. So I don't think the system or even the AI more generally, be it in its current form or even 5 years down the road, is going to replace those jobs. I think it's going to help those jobs evolve. And so if we think about a lot of the time that gets put into a recruiting role, especially some of the tasks that might be more repetitive, like finding individual candidates, reading through their profiles, opening up all their links. I think that's where AI can play a really strong role in helping make those steps faster, giving you the right information faster. But in the end, it's still the recruiter making those decisions, evaluating the candidates, identifying who's worth reaching out to and who we should have conversations with. And I think that's where these AI systems are particularly powerful, is making recruiters even more effective and helping them level up in finding the very best candidates for a role, which, if you think about it more holistically, makes the biggest possible impact on a company and the company's success. The more we're able to find individual candidates that really bring specific skill sets or values to a company, the better the company will be able to perform too.
Awesome. Yeah, no. So in the future, like where's People GPT going?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that we're pretty excited to be working on. So the first one is around the data sources that we have. So we already have quite a variety, basically most of different public professional profiles, but we're always working on adding more and more data sources there. So if you think about bios on websites, even articles or past speeches, even podcasts that individuals have done, those are all information that can be really helpful for that recruiting information too. And those are things that we're pretty excited to be adding soon. And then at the same time, we're also always doing workflow improvements. So just making it even faster to help you show the right profiles, get their links, email addresses, etc. And so particularly on that workflow side, there's a bunch of new features that we're excited to release too.
Is it, I know we have listeners from all across the globe. Is it mostly US focused right now, like for People GPT?
Yeah, it's fully global. So the platform will work anywhere. The kind of main considering factor where some geographies might work better than others, is the amount of professional information that people post publicly. So an interesting example that I actually look quite deeply into is Japan, where there's kind of a less of a frequency of posting public professional information and descriptions of that information online. And so in those cases, it might be a little bit tougher to find those candidates, depending on the information that's available there too.
And People GPT automatically translates into different languages with those emails too?
Yeah, it'll work for any language, and so you can actually also speak to it in different languages. One caveat being is sometimes it responds in English, even if you ask a question in a different language, but it'll always understand.
That is crazy. I know I've like done some searches overseas where I'm like, back in the day using Google Translate to kind of like write the emails. Once I find the person, now like an AI system can just kind of handle all that.
For sure. Or even figuring out like what job titles are in different languages, what the different experiences are in different languages, and so a lot of those things is what we try to help alleviate to.
So I'm going to ask this as like a two-part question. The first part is going to be with People GPT. So how can companies and recruiters leverage People GPT to win top talent?
hmm So I think the when I think about both I guess taking a step back first and thinking about how the internet or specifically online professional sites have transformed the recruitment industry is in essence a question of data. We suddenly have much more information that's accessible to us. And we've made that searchable typically through Boolean strings or different filter-based searches. Now, what People GPT does is it lets you not only search by filter, but it actually lets you search by context and experience. And so the system understands the background of an individual and what their career has looked like. And that's our goal and where we're very much focused is help you find much more specific high fit talent where we see much higher conversion rates, but also much higher success once the talent has been recruited into the organization. Because we're no longer just looking for, specific job titles or years of experience that are a fit, but we're actually looking at what did they do in their prior role and how will that impact what they're doing in their future role. And so a lot of those decisions used to only be made at the interview stage. And I think we can bring a lot of that one step forward now to the actual recruiting stage, helping find those right fit candidates and being able to go one step deeper than we were able to before.
Can you give like a good example? I know like when I was playing around with your system, like, you can almost like prompt it down deeper into the selection. Can you give a few examples of that?
Yeah, one good example that we did I actually worked quite closely with the customer on this search is they were looking for a software engineer with specific experience in fraud detection, And so we knew kind of some of the broad outlines. We knew it was supposed to be a senior software engineer. They should have experience at a fintech company, and we knew the location was San Francisco. But beyond that, we really wanted someone who had built these fraud detection systems on top of payments infrastructure. And so that's where it gets really specific and really tricky to find the right candidate. And typically it would involve opening up a lot of different LinkedIn profiles to try to find a hint of someone having that experience. And so that's where we're able to go really deep and not only understand individuals who had mentioned those specific experiences, but also taking a look at individuals who had experiences in data science or even in machine learning before in other roles, then moved on to a fintech company and applied some of that within the fintech business. And we're able to make really good predictions about individuals that have those experience in machine learning for fraud detection and go more and more specific on the searches that we were looking for.
So before I ask the next question, I'm in the GovCon space, the IC world. Are you ever going to move into like the cleared world and cleared candidates?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we're excited about it, and we have some customers who have been speaking about that too. I can't make any promises right now, but it is a direction that we're actively looking into.
Okay, I always wonder just because it's a very interesting and unique space, but I to also understand that it isn't the masses are in there.
For sure. But we like it. The more niche searches are, the more excited I get too, is because I think that's where the system is really able to show its powers and help find that one candidate that might have been overlooked otherwise.
I'm going to re-ask the question, but kind of like more on a general AI focus. So you're the CEO of an AI focused recruitment company that's disrupting recruiting. But as a whole, generalized, how do you think AI is going to disrupt slash revolutionize the recruiting industry?
Ooh. So I guess I have a slight bias in terms of I think about it from our company and our perspective and how we integrate into different customers' workflows. But on a kind of more general and holistic note too, I think it's going to shift a lot of the time and especially value add time in the recruiting and talent industry to focus more on one-on-one collaborating with hiring managers to really identify the right fit for a role, and two, being able to assess candidates before even reaching out to them. And so I think those are trends that we're going to see more and more strongly, especially when compared to, say the sourcing side of initially identifying candidates before we move into that outreach stage.
Awesome. So I want to kind of like move into some of what I call like quick fire questions. And just like general advice, because you're sitting there talking to a lot of recruiters, you're talking to a lot of high level TA professionals, a lot of high level search firm owners. So you're getting a different perspective than a lot of us, like sometimes like in the trenches. And I'd love to
Mhm.
hear your perspective on that. So, there's a lot of recruiters that are just starting off in this industry. They're brand new. Welcome to 2023, the whole new career in recruiting. Everything that you're seeing in the AI world and all the conversations that you're having, what advice would you give to a brand new recruiter that's actually just starting out?
Yeah. So one thing that I've seen, and it's an interesting one as well because it's maybe a little bit counterintuitive at first, is the focus on input metrics that I think a lot of kind of new recruiters have, where it's a lot about profiles found, outbound emails sent, conversions to that first interview, where those metrics are really important. But in the end, the metric that truly matters is whether it's a successful hire, and we'll only find that one out a year down the road. And so I think that's where I'd give the advice to have a stronger focus on the personalization and the real focus on individual candidates, the quality of who we're bringing in and reaching out to, rather than necessarily the volume at which we're doing it. And so I think especially when, being new to the job, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, but also important to take a step back and consider those candidates more carefully before deciding who we want to reach out to.
Awesome. So, then the same question, but for experienced recruiters. I know there are a lot of us, I don't want to say like old dogs, but I'm coming in at almost like 20 years of recruiting. The world is changing. It's kind of changing fast. But what advice would you give to recruiters that have been in the game for a while?
Yeah, so I think what I'd encourage the most there is being open to these new technologies, giving technologies like PeopleGPT or even ChatGPT more generally looking at them with an open eye and thinking about how they could be useful in different searches and even more generally in the industry as a whole. And I think that can involve things like, a lot of experienced recruiters that I speak with are really, really familiar with Boolean searches, and they can write those in like seconds. Um, at the same time, I think that Boolean searches are not going to play that large of a role in the industry in, say, 2 to 3 years. And a lot of those searches might be running in a different way. And so that's where I really encourage that kind of openness of giving a shot at the new technology, challenging oneself to think about prompting, how can that best work, and how we can use that to find candidates instead.
Awesome. What has been one of the most unique searches that you've had on your guys' platform that you guys have run across?
Ooh, it's tough to say the uniqueness. So one industry that I was not familiar with at all that I've gotten to know now more recently was we have a few customers that do recruiting for yachts, and so they help find staff to work on yachts. And so that was an industry that I had no familiarity with, and to be honest, I was a little bit nervous to see how the searches would perform, but fortunately it ended up getting good results too.
That's phenomenal because, like, you know, when you're thinking about an awesome new AI tech company, you're thinking like most of the time it's very tech focused, but finding
Yeah.
people for yachts, that's wild.
Yeah, it was quite fun. So I think that's also been, when we started this off, a lot of the things that we were testing or thinking about were in the tech space, and we were testing a lot with different things in the software engineering field, or even in different roles that might be most relevant to tech companies. But right now, the far majority of our customers are actually not in tech, and they're not recruiting majority for software engineering roles. And so that's also been a really really good journey for us to go through and take in those experiences and learnings to make sure that the platform is really serving the people who are using it.
Yeah, no, I actually would have thought like, at least, kind of in the tech world and I see in the DoD, but I really thought like it'd be heavily tech focused for you guys. That's just wild that it's not.
Yeah, it was surprising to me too.
And that's the fun part about a company's journey is like you just where it goes and the customer base and the people that get excited about the product.
For sure. And it's also always really nice whenever I do a call with a customer, be it, getting them set up or helping them with a specific search. Every time I learn something new, we run a new search together and they're never the same. And so with each of those searches, I feel like I'm able to expand my horizon on there too.
Awesome. So, has there ever been a book that has had a huge impact on your career? And if so, what book was that?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. So I'll give a bit of a different answer to that. The so when I read, I try to read fiction where I am able to take my mind off of work, and so it might sound a bit odd, and maybe it's not the best practice, but I actually don't read professional or work related long form content. Of course, I read articles, research papers, etc. But for books in particular, I really love fiction. Big fan of Ken Follett, Century trilogy. So in case anyone is interested in some long form fiction, definitely recommend those two.
Well, and this is kind of a question that I've had to also reframe. Is there other avenues and other things like YouTube or like, podcasts that you've really got into that's helped your learning? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, so I think on the podcast side, I've been also trying to really expand my dimension. So I feel like in my work day, I spend all day on recruiting. I spend all day on AI. What are the new advances there? And so often I'm tempted to, start listening to those podcasts too. But I actually try to not do that. So sorry for this particular pod. Once in a while, of course I do, but I try to stay up to date with, daily news, news podcasts, same on YouTube and just going out, learning new things. Really recently gotten into learning more about religion in particular, and so that's been an interesting field. Really, just trying to expand my horizons there.
Awesome. So you've worked with multiple companies, expansion, international expansion with a company, working with multiple founders, all sorts of stuff before you started People GPT. And if you can go back, and this is, I normally ask this as a recruiting question, but I'm going to ask this as a career question for you.
Mhm.
Everything that you've learned now, all the experiences that you've had, what would David tell himself as advice getting out of college, preparing for the real world?
Mm. I think speed of decision making. So that's the number one thing that I always think about is I have a tendency to go and overthink things. I really can kind of get really deep into different decisions, but in the end, whether it ends up being a slightly more right or a slightly less right decisions actually matters a lot less than the time I'm able to put into executing on it. And so that's what I continue to push myself on every day is making those decisions fast. It also means that you sometimes make more mistakes, but you learn from them faster and you're able to grow really quickly. And so whenever I'm starting to think about something or doubting something, I try to make that decision quickly. And then whether that ends up being the perfect decision or not is perhaps less important than the speed at which I was able to execute it.
Awesome. And a kind of a second question to bounce off that, there's a few recruit tech founders, owners like that listen to this podcast. What advice would you give to another recruit tech founder on, how to be successful and kind of how to have success like you guys are having success?
Um, I'm not sure if there's any specific advice that I can give there. Um, I think adopting new technologies and always being willing to take risks with those too is certainly something that I think will continue to be really important in the coming years. I think there's going to be a really rapid pace of advancements in AI in particular, and trying to set up the company in a way that it's ready to jump onto that, adopt that, and make products better rather than trying to catch up is one of the most important bits.
Awesome. Now, before I let you go, is there anything else that you would love to share with the listeners?
Nothing directly except for thanking you for taking the time.
And so if you want to connect with David, I'll have his LinkedIn profile. I'll have the link for PeopleGPT in the show notes. Definitely check it out. Like play with it. This is just it's for somebody that like you're gonna laugh. You know, LinkedIn was kind of new when I started my recruiting career. To now be able to put in prompts and get personalized people. Definitely play with it. It's a cool software. Like I said, I'll have the link in the show notes. And David, it was awesome to host you. And I can't wait to see more disruptions that you guys are going to cause in the recruiting space. It's going to be fun.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And for the listeners, until next time, guys.